92 days remain, 92 days until July 1st, the date written into the trade architecture of North America, the date when the United States, Canada, and Mexico must show their hand on the future of the agreement that has governed hundreds of billions in cross-border commerce. This is not some dry bureaucratic checkpoint. This is a pressure point with factories, paychecks, freight lanes, and investment decisions hanging off it. Most people think the real fight begins on that deadline. They are wrong. The fight is already underway because this is not a story about a document. It is a story about leverage. It is a story about who got to the board first, who understood the rules before the cameras arrived, and who is now trying to turn a trade review into a strategic weapon. And right now, Mark Carney is playing this like a man who understands that every tariff threat, every bilateral meeting, every delayed conversation, every side negotiation, every public insult, every market tremor, every quiet deal with another bloc is not a separate headline. It is a tile in a mosaic, and once you step back, the picture becomes very clear. There are only 3 doors here. Door 1 is the painful extension. The agreement survives, but only after bruising negotiations, costly concessions, and a fresh round of pressure over autos, energy, supply chains, and rules of origin. Door 2 is the limbo option. No final deal by July 1st, no dramatic collapse either, just annual reviews, recurring uncertainty, and a cloud hanging over North American investment every single year. Door 3 is the fracture. The trilateral structure weakens, bilateral arrangements stake over, and the regional coherence that made North American supply chains so efficient starts to splinter. Those are the doors: stability with pain, uncertainty without closure, or fragmentation with consequences. And the reason this matters is simple. If you know which door each side prefers, you know how to read every move before the move is announced. Now look at Carney's opening gambits. Move 1 was psychological. When Donald Trump escalated his rhetoric and called the existing pact irrelevant, Carney did not panic. He reframed the attacks as positioning ahead of a robust review that matters. Because once you publicly define the other side's outrage as negotiating posture, you deny them the monopoly on drama. You tell markets, businesses, and your own bureaucracy that this is not chaos. This is bargaining, that is not a defensive move, that is board control. Move 2 was structural. Canada signaled that the fight would not be confined to one single trilateral table. Ottawa made clear it was negotiating to remove tariffs on critical sectors like steel, aluminum, and automobiles, and that those outcomes could be wrapped into bilateral arrangements adjacent to the broader review. That is a very specific kind of leverage. It means Canada is not walking into July 1st with one doorway and one key. It is building side corridors. It is creating optionality. It is saying, if the big room gets locked, we are not trapped inside it. Move 3 was external. While the United States and Mexico launched bilateral discussions in early March to scope the joint review, Canada accelerated trade diversification elsewhere. Ottawa pushed harder on a potential Mercosur deal with its trade minister openly saying he wanted negotiations stepped up and hoped to get an agreement done by the fall. That is the kind of information most people miss because it looks unrelated. It is not unrelated. It is leverage hiding in plain sight. A country negotiating under tariff pressure does not diversify trade out of boredom. It diversifies to alter the psychology of dependence. It diversifies to signal that if one market becomes more coercive, another door will be opened. And this is where the board changes, because the hiding in plain sight mechanism at the center of all of this is Article 34.7, the joint review clause built into the agreement itself. For years, it's sat there like a legal footnote. Now it is active leverage. If all 3 governments confirm in writing that they want to continue, the agreement extends automatically for another 16 years. If they do not, the deal does not instantly die. That is the part many people get wrong. It enters annual review cycles year after year, with uncertainty becoming the instrument. The threat is not a clean explosion. The threat is a recurring fog, and in trade, fog can be just as destructive as fire. I'm about to show you the move that changes everything. If you've been following this, hit like now. The move that changes everything is not a tariff announcement. It is the conversion of time itself into pressure. Trump can use the deadline as spectacle. Carney can use the deadline as discipline. Trump can threaten to blow up confidence. Carney can force every business, province, ministry, and trading partner to prepare for all 3 doors at once. That is the deeper game. One side is using noise. To extract concessions, the other side is using preparation to survive the noise and narrow the other side's options. Now comes the evidence wall. On March 5th, the United States and Mexico announced the first round of bilateral discussions ahead of the joint review and said negotiators would begin scoping measures to reduce dependence on imports from outside the region, strengthen rules of origin, and secure North American supply chains, not Canada and Mexico, the United States and Mexico. On March 12th, the U.S. ambassador to Canada admitted there had been no substantive talks with Canada since October and openly said Washington was facing headwinds in the negotiations. On February 26th, Canada said it was still pushing to remove tariffs on critical sectors and that those could become bilateral arrangements beside the trilateral pact. On March 27th, Canada's trade minister said Mercosur talks were being accelerated with the explicit goal of getting a deal by the fall. On March 28th, Reuters reported from Windsor that businesses were already feeling the drag of uncertainty, with orders shrinking, investments stalling, and confidence thinning out. These are not disconnected events, these are the tiles. And the economic exposure is brutal. In the Windsor-Essex region, manufacturing accounts for nearly a quarter of employment. About 90% of the city's exports cross the U.S. border, often multiple times during production. Across Canada, roughly 68% of exports still go to the United States. In Windsor, the unemployment rate surged above 11% last June during the worst of the tariff uncertainty. Home sales in February fell 15%, almost double the national decline. A college manufacturing program was suspended because demand weakened. A local builder laid off 13 of 21 staff before slowly rehiring some of them. A small signs company said customers were ordering less, paying later, and bargaining harder. This is what uncertainty does before any formal collapse ever happens. It front-runs the damage. That is why the contrast matters. While Carney was reframing Trump's rhetoric as negotiation posture, Trump was inflating the drama around whether the pact was even relevant. While Carney was building optionality through sectoral talks, Trump was burning political oxygen on tariff threats. While Carney was widening Canada's trade map through Mercosur, Trump was narrowing the conversation to access, tariff buckets, and pressure. While Carney's side was preparing for all three doors, Trump's side was still relying on the power of the headline, and headlines matter. But in trade, paperwork matters more, process matters more, timing matters more. The side that understands the procedure often outlasts the side that dominates the soundbite. Whether this ends in a painful extension, whether it ends in rolling annual reviews, whether it ends in a fragmented North American framework, one truth is already visible. Carney is not treating this as a one-day showdown. He is treating it as a campaign of position. He is assuming Trump will threaten, that Washington will test pressure points, that Mexico will move first where it sees advantage, and that Canada cannot afford to walk into July 1st with only hope. That is why the so-called move is bigger than one announcement. The move is the architecture. The move is preparing bilateral channels, diversification channels, and messaging channels at the same time. And if you think this is just elite policy theater, watch your wallet, watch the grocery bill, watch auto prices, watch hiring in border cities, watch whether manufacturers delay expansion, watch whether investors treat North America like an integrated production base or like three countries drifting under a shared cloud. Trade wars do not stay in ministerial memos. They move into shipping costs, supplier contracts, overtime hours, mortgage confidence, apprenticeship demand, and retirement portfolios. In a place like Windsor, people do not need a think tank paper to explain exposure. They live it first and they live it hardest. So here is the scorecard on timing. Carney is ahead because he is using the countdown as an organizing force. On narrative discipline, Carney is ahead because he has refused to treat every provocation like a collapse. On optionality, Carney is ahead because Canada is working sector by sector and market by market. On coercive power, Trump still has the heavier piece. Because the United States controls market access and can weaponize tariff pressure faster. On uncertainty, Trump can still flood the board. On preparation, Carney looks more deliberate, and in a game like this, deliberate matters. The clock is still ticking. 92 days become 91, then 90, then 89. The mosaic gets larger with every statement, every delay, every side meeting, every tariff warning, every new trade corridor opened somewhere else. Most viewers will see separate headlines, the Grandmaster's C-shape. they see pressure, they see endgame. So if you were Donald Trump, what move would you make now? And if you were Mark Carney, would you push for door 1, survive door 2, or quietly prepare for door 3 before the rest of the board even realizes the game has changed?